Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. A Washington socialite and journalist has accused former First Lady Jill Biden of elder abuse in an explosive new interview after former President Joe Biden was diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer. Also, the New York Post published a well-known and respected geriatric doctor's op-ed confirming she believes Joe Biden's been abused. We have the details of this narrative that is developing around Joe Biden's failing health. President Trump lashed out at who he called a terrible NBC reporter over a Qatar jet question during an Oval Office meeting with South African president, calling the reporter a jerk and an idiot. We have those details for you, too. And an extra $1 billion fell into the South Carolina legislators' laps as they started budget negotiations this week, which makes a budget process a little bit easier when you have that much extra money to spend.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
All right, folks, I need your full attention on this one because something absolutely jaw-dropping just happened in Washington, and it didn't come from a Trump rally or a House hearing or some hidden camera. No, this came from inside the Beltway, from the heart of the D.C. establishment. Sally Quinn, you may know the name, longtime Washington Post columnist, married to Ben Bradley, the man who helped take down Richard Nixon. She's been at every cocktail party in Georgetown probably for the past 50 years. She's not some rogue conservative with an axe to grind. This woman is an old-school liberal Washington, as liberal as it gets. And she just accused the former First Lady, Jill Biden, of elder abuse. Now, let me repeat that. Elder abuse. She said it in an interview with Tara Palmieri. Folks, she didn't mince words. She laid it out cold. She said, I blame Jill Biden for this, for pushing Joe to run for re-election despite his clearly deteriorating health. Said it was a terrible disservice to the country. Said watching Jill prop him up on the campaign trail after that train wreck of a debate last year, her word, hideous. She's right, isn't she? I said this myself last year, that it was elder abuse, the way they were pushing Joe Biden out there. It was obvious the man wasn't capable of running the country, let alone running a campaign for 4 more years. Now, Ms. Quinn went on even further. She said Jill wasn't protecting her husband, that she was exploiting him. Called it elder abuse, not metaphorically, not sarcastically. She was very seriously. She is very serious about the fact she thinks Jill Biden, under any other circumstances, would be charged with elder abuse. Now, stop and think about that for a second. It's not coming from some of the likely sources. It's not coming from Fox News. It's not coming from the Epoch Times. It's not coming from any of the conservative sources. It's not a right-wing op-ed in the Federalist. This is Sally Quinn, D.C. royalty. And she's calling out Jill Biden for pushing a cognitively unwell man back into the political arena. Not because it was good for the country, because it kept the family in power. Now, we have suspected all along that Jill Biden was what kept Joe Biden out there, haven't we? When Joe Biden announced in 2024 that he was going to seek re-election, we all kind of scratched our head because we weren't expecting it. And we suspected that someone was, as this lady says, propping him up. I suspected all along that it was Jill Biden. I think Jill Biden probably is who got Joe Biden into the race in 2020 to begin with. How many times did Joe Biden tell us he was not going to run and then ended up getting into the race in the very wee hours of the race? Now, you tell me, if the roles were reversed and Melania Trump had done something similar, would the media treat this like a story? Or would it be the story? I think you know the answer. I think you know the headlines that this would make. Let's talk about the facts. Joe Biden was diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer. It wasn't made public until after the 2024 election cycle. His last known screening, 2014. 2014, over 10 years ago. Does that sound odd to you? We've learned that Joe Biden had an enlarged prostate years ago. So why did they just stop testing? Or did they, and they just didn't release the results? You're telling me that no one in the White House, no one on Joe Biden's medical team, not even Dr. Jill Biden herself, now she's not a medical doctor, we know that. No one noticed his decline. The whole world noticed it, but they didn't in the inner circle. No one thought that maybe a guy in his 80s should get regular cancer screenings. Come on. Give me a break. And it gets worse. Sally Quinn compared Biden's behavior, the forgetfulness, the blank stares, the wandering, the lost in the deer in the headlight look, to her late husband's final years with dementia. And this is a woman who lived through that day in and day out. And she's watching Joe Biden and saying, it looks like the beginning of dementia to me. Folks, if that doesn't send chills down your spine. Because here's the hard truth. This country was run for the better part of 4 years by a man who was not mentally or physically equipped to handle the job. And it wasn't just a fluke. It was a cover-up from the inner circle, from the staffers, from the media, and yes, from Dr. Jill Biden. She wanted the power. She wanted to be First Lady. And she wanted to be First Lady for another 4 years. Because she knew, and let's not pretend she didn't, she saw him up close every day. She knew him better than anybody. She had to have seen what we were all seeing. She had to have seen the lapses, the confusion. And instead of protecting him, she doubled down. She pushed him forward. She kept the machine running. Why? For what? Legacy? Ego? Or maybe power? I'm going to go with power. Quinn said it. Everybody thought that he shouldn't run. People were distraught. They felt sorry for him. But he ran anyway, and now we're all paying the price for the last 4 years. You want to talk about a real scandal? Forget Hunter's laptop for a second. Forget the classified documents in the garage by his Corvette. What we're talking about now is a man who is mentally and physically unfit to serve, being propped up like a mannequin and sold to the American public as a viable president and wanting another 4 years. And his wife, the person closest to him, allegedly helped orchestrate all of this. Now, you tell me, what kind of leadership is that? What kind of compassion is that? Sally Quinn is right. It's not leadership. It's not compassion. It's abuse. It's exploitation. It's elder abuse on the biggest stage in the world. You agree? You agree that this was elder abuse? Now, the question is, do we just let it go? Do we forget it? Do we just put the last 4 years behind us and move on? Because we can't change it, I don't guess. Does Jill Biden, is she held responsible in any way? And the media, what about the mainstream media? Don't you think they owe all of us an apology? Because they laughed off every question about Biden's health for years. Every time someone said, hey, this doesn't look right, they sneered. That's just a right-wing conspiracy theory, they'd say. They'd write. They'd report. Yeah, we're all just a bunch of nut jobs, conspiracy theorists. Well, guess what? The truth has a way of coming out, doesn't it? Even when it comes from the most unlikely corners of D.C. high society, like Sally Quinn. Wonder if the mainstream media will pick up on this. Now, Quinn's not the only one. Coming up next, I'm going to tell you the story. I'm going to share with you an op-ed that was published in the New York Post yesterday by Elaine Healy. Well, who is Elaine Healy? She's a medical doctor, a practicing geriatric physician, certified nursing home medical director, and she wrote an op-ed published in the New York Post where she says, as a professional, as a geriatric medical specialist, she is too familiar with the signs of elder abuse. I'm going to give you her assessment of just what was going on with Joe Biden. That's up next. Okay, continuing this story on Joe Biden and the accusations from a well-known socialite, Democrat, left-leaning liberal, Sally Quinn. She's a longtime Washington Post columnist who yesterday accused Jill Biden of elder abuse. Well, she's not the only one. Elaine Healy is a medical doctor, practicing geriatric physician, certified nursing home medical director. She wrote an op-ed published in the New York Post. She says, as a geriatric medical specialist, I am all too familiar with the telltale signs of elder abuse, which is disturbingly common among American seniors. So as an alarmed citizen, I have referred former President Joe Biden to Adult Protective Services Division of Delaware's Department of Health and Social Services as a likely elder abuse victim, naming Jill Biden, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, and former Biden Chief of Staff Jeffrey Zients as possible perpetrators. The news of Biden's advanced prostate cancer diagnosis, the release of audio from Special Counsel Robert Hur's 2023 interview, and the revelations of Biden's cognitive decline from the new book, Original Sin, make it clear to me, she writes, that we're seeing something even more than a political and media cover-up. The former president was, and likely still is, being victimized. Healy writes, elder abuse is an intentional act or failure to act by a caregiver or another trusted person that causes or creates a risk of harm to an older adult. As this case tragically demonstrates, it can happen to anyone committed by anyone. She goes on to write, visible bruising and other injuries from physical violence are obvious forms of abuse. Nonviolent actions like deprivation of food, causing weight loss, or intimidation causing social withdrawal and personality changes are also defined as abusive behavior. A more sinister type of elder abuse, however, involves the exploitation of an elderly individual for the abuser's financial, personal, or in this case, political gain. It seems apparent that those closest to Joe Biden, people upon whom he was and remains dependent, usurped the power and authority of his office for their own benefit, while professionals who had a duty to protect him failed to do so. In the New York Post column, Healy wrote, who can forget Jill Biden's gushing praise of her husband's humiliating performance during the presidential debate? What was behind her insistence that he run for office when she, above all others, had to be aware of his failing cognitive capacities and declining physical health? Is she a loving spouse or a master manipulator? using his dependency on her to control his decision-making. If the latter, she is engaged in elder abuse. What kind of medical professional could fail to recognize the profound deterioration of the president's physical and intellectual capabilities? How could a physician issue a clean bill of health for someone so obviously suffering from dementia, condoning the pursuit of another 4-year stint in the most cognitively challenging job on the planet? And here she asks a very valid question. Healy says, how could any clinician fail to diagnose prostate cancer when it was still in an early, potentially curable stage? Either Dr. Kevin O'Connor failed to practice medicine at the professional standard of care, or he has actively participated in a cover-up, in which case he too was involved in elder abuse. Healy writes, the case against him is even more egregious since O'Connor, above all others, had a professional duty to protect his patient. Which person, or indeed how many people, on the president's staff used his auto pen to sign official documents, including the dozens of presidential pardons in his final days? Now, this is a very valid question and an important one, because so many of those actions we all were stunned by, weren't we? Maybe Joe Biden did not even know that he was pardoning all of these people. Maybe he had no clue. Maybe Jill was using the auto pen to do what she wanted to do. Back to the New York Post. Healy writes, surely they recognize the same limitations that Mr. Herr saw when he de facto acknowledged Biden's lack of cognitive capacity. But even if they blinded themselves to the truth, the Justice Department's website specifically defines as elder abuse the use of a senior signature to execute monetary and other transactions the individual doesn't understand. Bingo. So Jill Biden and others would have been committing elder abuse if they're writing checks out of Joe Biden's checking account without his being able to understand what they are. So I would think that using the auto pen to sign official documents of the President of the United States, that is a crime as well. She writes, shame on Jeffrey Zients and all other staff members who literally stole the authority of a compromised, vulnerable old man for their own purposes. The referral I filed to the state of Delaware did not recommend her for investigation, but I find his actions both questionable and concerning. He declined to press criminal charges against Biden for illegally retaining classified documents because he found the president to be a, quote, sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. As a trained attorney, however, Herr must have been aware that the American Bar Association recognizes the legal concept of undue influence as it relates to elder abuse, the intentional use of social influence, deception, and manipulation to gain control of the decision-making of another. Herr came to his conclusions regarding Biden's lack of capacity in October 2023, but failed to sound the alarm despite being fully aware that the complex orders and documents being issued in the president's name exceeded his cognitive capabilities. Didn't he have a duty to do so under his profession's stated standards? In our system, the final determination of whether an elder has been the victim of abuse is made by a state's Adult Protective Services Agency following its investigation of a credible allegation. We can only hope that the state of Delaware will function as it should and give the former president the attention and scrutiny his tragic situation deserves. What do you think? Do you believe that Elaine Healy's referral of Joe Biden's case to the Adult Protective Services in Delaware will finally get someone's attention? Do you think they will investigate whether or not Jill Biden has been taking advantage of Joe Biden and possibly broke the law? We'll see. Your comments are welcome. Text me, email me, joe@joeyhudson.com. Leave me a quick message on the MyPillow message line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Always use promo code Joey when you go to MyPillow.com and get the very best savings. President Trump was not very kind to a NBC News reporter. It was Peter Alexander yesterday. The president called him an idiot and a jerk for asking about the luxurious jet the Pentagon accepted from Qatar during an Oval Office meeting with his South African counterpart. Now, this jet that Qatar has offered, and I'm assuming the deal is going to go through to give it to the Department of Defense, has the mainstream media literally standing on their head. They just cannot get past this story. So here you have a head of state from South Africa sitting beside the president in the Oval Office. And like Trump always does, he allows the news media to be in the office at some point in time. And you have this guy, Alexander, yelling a question to the president about the jet. Here's the exchange.
Mr. President, the Pentagon announced that it would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One. Perhaps
what are you talking about?
Can we have a South Africa question, please? Mr. President,
the Pentagon spokesperson.
What does this have to do with the Qatari jet? They're giving the United States Air Force a jet, okay? And it's a great thing. We're talking about a lot of other things. It's NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw. You are a real, you're a terrible reporter. Number one, you don't have what it takes to be a reporter. You're not smart enough. But for you to go into a subject about a jet that was given to the United States Air Force, which is a very nice thing, they also gave $5.1 trillion worth of investment in addition to the jet. Go back. You ought to go back to your studio at NBC because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. They are so terrible the way you run that network, and you're a disgrace. No more questions from me. Go ahead.
No more questions. He waves him off. Now, Trump was asked the question by Alexander literally seconds after the president played a 5-minute video for South African President Cyril Ramaphosa detailing purported evidence of crimes against white South African farmers. The president accused the journalist and his network of trying to dodge covering the controversial subject matter. He said, "We're talking about a lot of other things. Is NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw?" He said, "You are real. You're a terrible person." I mean, he just went at it with this guy. He said, "You ought to go back to your studio at NBC because Brian Roberts and the people that run the place, they ought to be investigated." Now, Trump refused to allow Alexander to ask a different question on his claims of white South African genocide, calling the reporter a disgrace. He said his name is Peter something. He's a terrible reporter. Unfazed by the public ridicule and Trump's attempts to move on, Alexander continued to press the president, again yelling out questions. Trump was still seething about the Qatar jet query several minutes later after both he and the South African president responded to a question about the allegations of genocide in South Africa. He said if the news wasn't fake like NBC, which is fake news, if they weren't fake news like this jerk that we have here, if we had real reporters, they'd be covering it. The president of South Africa attempted to defuse the situation by apologizing to Trump for not coming to the White House with a plane in tow. Wow. And speaking of the circus in Washington is back. Capitol Hill once again turned into a political street theater as left-wing activists, including the group calling themselves the People's Action Institute, flooded the halls of Congress yesterday, chanting, blocking doors, raising fists, and screaming slogans like Medicaid cuts kill. Let me translate for you. We don't want reform. We don't want accountability. We just want more government checks. No questions asked. That's basically what they were saying. The protesters, some of them were in wheelchairs, others just looking for a photo op, shut down the hallways in the Longworth House office building. They stormed into budget markup meetings. They screamed about killing veterans and the disabled. They waved their signs. They shouted, "We got power." Meanwhile, the adults in the room were trying to do something responsible. The Republican members of the committee, they're trying to pass a budget that reforms Medicaid. It stops the bleeding, and it restores basic accountability to a program that now covers 71 million Americans and costs hundreds of billions of dollars a year. You and I are paying it. Let's be clear. No one is ripping health care away from the poor. No one is canceling coverage for disabled and especially for veterans. It's a flat-out lie. They know it. What this bill does, what Trump and House Republicans are trying to do, we had Representative Ralph Norman on the show on Monday. If you missed that, go back and listen. Go back and listen in the podcast. I don't have the episode number, but go back and just search for Ralph Norman in Just the Truth and listen to that. Listen to what he said. We got to clean Medicaid up. We got to clean this mess up. We're talking about work requirements for able-bodied adults. Now, who can object to requiring someone who is able to work to do that in exchange for services? We're talking about ending fraud, closing loopholes, making states responsible for runaway spending instead of dumping it all on federal taxpayers. That's not cruelty. It's common sense. And if we want our government to be accountable, and if we want the size of federal government reduced, like, hey, an overwhelming majority voted for Donald Trump last year, that's what he had promised he would do. So you got to assume that they want them to do what it's going to take to get to that, to accomplish that. And one of those programs that's out of control is Medicaid. As Congressman Ralph Norman told us, he wants illegals off of the Medicaid rolls. There is no explanation on why someone in our country illegally should be getting Medicaid, period. Stop. Full stop right there. But, of course, the left can't run on facts. They like to run on fear. So what do? They send in the activists. They push people in wheelchairs in who are claiming that their Medicaid is going to be cut. They try to shout down lawmakers. They block government buildings. They try to turn this into some civil rights moment, like standing up for Medicaid is the new Selma, Alabama. It's not. And it's embarrassing. They just don't realize how stupid they look. Right on cue, there's Senator Cory Booker, megaphone in hand, standing on the Capitol steps, cheering them on, saying, keep fighting. Don't let them take away your health care. Senator Booker, nobody is talking about taking away anyone's health care. What he doesn't say is that the program is broken. What he won't admit is that there are billions in waste. And Medicaid is being abused by people who aren't even eligible. Yes, that includes illegal immigrants. And when Republicans try to do something about it, when they say, hey, maybe we should make sure the system's actually helping the people that it's meant to help, they get labeled as murderers. I mean, listen to this quote from the protest. A woman in a wheelchair screaming, they want to kill the disabled, they want to kill the sick, they want to kill the veterans who have fought for us. That's disgusting. It's dishonest. It's dangerous. No one in this bill is targeting disabled people. No one is targeting veterans. What we're doing is saying able-bodied people. If you're in a wheelchair, you're disabled, I don't think Ralph Norman or anybody else is going to take your Medicaid away from you. I don't think anyone's going to try to argue that you should be working if you're disabled and you're not able to work. If you want taxpayer-funded benefits and you're an able-bodied adult, you need to be working. If you're not working, you need to be training to learn a new skill so you can work. You can't sit around on your rear end for the rest of your life and expect me to work every day to pay you. That's not harsh. That's the American way. And let's not forget what Representative Richard Hudson said this week, because he nailed it. Republicans are ending waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid so the most vulnerable get the care they need. That was his statement, and that's exactly what's happening. That's the point. He added, and this is key, Democrats are lying to protect a broken status quo that lets illegal immigrants siphon off billions meant for American families. That's exactly what's happening. Bingo. Bingo. The Trump-backed budget doesn't gut Medicaid like some of the Democrats want you to believe. It saves it. It's going to set it up so that it continues to serve the people that truly need it for many, many years to come. If they don't do it now, it's going to go broke. They're setting it up so that the people who have earned the benefits will get the benefits. So the next time you see one of these protesters, ask yourself, who's really being hurt here? And guess what? This budget bill, it's not just a spending plan. It's a reality check. It's proof that Republicans under Trump are ready to lead again, not just talk tough on TV, but actually clean up the mess that the Biden Democrats made. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Firmin Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Firmin Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Firmin Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Firmin, Matthew Firmin. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Firmin Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Firmin Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Firmin Ford online at firminford.com, firminford.com. On our text line, Jennifer writes, thank you so much for the text attachment. And don't ever hesitate to text me to be sure that I hear something, but I'm right on time. I heard him, and he made a lot of sense. She's talking about Ralph Norman. I had sent out a text to a lot of my listeners. And by the way, if you're not on my mailing list, go to joeyhudson.com, click on Connect with Joey, sign up for my emails and my text. She said, your questions were good. It was helpful to understand it from his point of view, and I'm sure that his point of view is shared by others there. Hope they're able to get on the same page and pass this big, beautiful bill. Andy, being a New Yorker, identifies a lot with the SALT issue. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate your text. Texter says, hey, Joey, my personal opinion, I think Nancy Mace knew exactly what she was doing, getting her picks taken. Just a good way to get her agenda out there. I'll never vote for her. Pete writes, Joey, listening to Nancy Mace babble about privacy in your house without bringing up all the NSA surveillance is laughable. The Bill of Rights is to protect us from government spying, not from her poor choices on romantic partners. Representative Mace needs to raise her standards on judging people's character. 2 divorces and a broken engagement to a pervert all before she's 50. This lady is a glory hound, and South Carolina should not even consider her for governor. Heaven help us. We don't need another Nikki Haley. Your comments are welcome as well. Text me, email me, joeyhudson.com. You can always leave me a message, too. On the MyPillow message line, just dial 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Leave me a message and know that it could air in a show soon. And always use promo code Joey when you go to MyPillow.com, and you'll get the very best price that Mike Lindell has to offer. And boy, he's still got some great deals on the Giza Dream Sheets. He's got some great deals on the pillows, of course, the towels, the slippers, everything. When you go to MyPillow.com, if you use promo code Joey, you're going to get a great deal on all of it. The Giza Dream Sheets, he still has some colors left in queens, kings, split kings, cow kings. It's $49.98 when you use promo code Joey, regardless of what size. Order now, because when they're gone, they're gone. And also, for a limited time, when you order over $100, you're going to receive $100 in free digital gifts. So call 800-893-4059 or go to MyPillow.com. MyPillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. An extra $1 billion fell into the laps of legislators as they started budget negotiations this week, making a budget process with a few sticking points potentially even smoother. Look, it's a lot easier if you got an extra $1 billion laying around, isn't it? Following a stronger than anticipated tax season for the state, according to the South Carolina Daily Gazette, they write, along with continued increases in corporate income tax and sales tax collections, legislators will have an additional $669 million for one-time expenses and $377 million in recurring revenue, according to the State Board of Economic Advisors. Now, normally, these mid-year hikes occur before the chambers approve their budget plans. But the state's revenue forecasters declined to recognize any surplus at its meeting last month, so legislators were just now getting this. However, with just 6 weeks left in the fiscal year, the board decided to officially increase its revenue estimates. The $669 million is most, but not all, of what's flowed into the state coffers above expectations through April, and the $377 is the boost in projections for the fiscal year starting July the 1st. House Ways and Means Chairman Bruce Bannister said those surprisingly good numbers will make a lot of what we've been fighting over a lot easier. A 6-member committee, 3 from the state House of Representatives and 3 from the state Senate, will be tasked with hashing out the differences in their chambers' roughly $14.5 billion budget plan. The panel met publicly for about an hour on Tuesday before staff members or the staff mentioned the $1 billion adjustment, and the meeting adjourned. Talks resumed yesterday and will continue, I assume, today. Some major parts of the budget package were already locked in before negotiations began. That includes $1,500 raises in the state's minimum pay for teachers and an accelerated income tax cut, which completes a 2022 law that phased in rate reductions. Other items that are still up for debate, for example, the Senate put an additional $100 million into updating aging bridges across the state, while the House provided $200 million as the second installment of a 5-year $1 billion commitment sought by the State Department of Transportation. The Senate sent the DOT $25 million to cover cleanup costs of Hurricane Helene, not paid by the federal government, while the House provided $35 million. So these differences, they'll sit down and they'll hash it all out. These 3 House members and 3 senators. There are a number of projects at the state's universities that one chamber funded while the other did not. Other differences are in how the money's spent. For example, both chambers put an additional $112 million into state aid to classrooms, which is meant for teachers' raises. So that amount is set. However, an adjustment in the way the House proposes to fund virtual charter schools could shift more of that total to traditional K-12 schools. How the Compromise Committee might spend the additional $1 billion? Well, who knows? Representative Bannister, when questioned by the South Carolina Daily Gazette, did not give any hints as to how that might go. Legislators already expected smoother sailing during this year's budget process than in recent years because of the good numbers. When disagreements over how much to spend on Clemson's new veterinary school either stalled the process or derailed it for weeks, now, with plenty of money, they can do things like that. The committee expects to reach a compromise by the end of the week, sending the spending plan back to both chambers for final approval next Wednesday. That leaves more time than usual before the fiscal year begins July the 1st. Budget negotiations normally carry into June, sometimes with only days to spare. But, hey, again, got an extra $1 billion lying around? It's easy to do, isn't it? Look, I could map out my spending plan. My family budget with Peg and Jesse and Simon a lot easier if I had that much money, extra money laying around. A lot of the new money could be put into savings, adding to the $1.2 billion that's already in reserves. Representative Bannister said there's enough money to cover everything, and then we'll have money left over that we will not allocate in this budget cycle. And I'm glad to hear that, because too often they get these forecasts of this extra money and they feel like they have to spend it. You don't have to spend it for the sake of spending it. Put it in the reserve fund, because I can promise you there'll be another rainy day at some point. Despite getting more revenue than expected, according to the report, the state's economic forecasters are warning that this growth may not last, and it probably won't. Although the state's population and income are expected to continue to grow, proposed tariffs could cause some businesses to take a more measured approach to activity. We don't know what's going to happen. So, again, kudos to some of the ones who, and to Representative Bannister for saying, hey, We'll just put it in the reserves. Putting aside part of this year's extra revenue for next year's budget process could help offset some of those impacts as well. Bannister said, certainly it's nice to have growing revenues and one-time money that's not going to be spent this year to have a cushion in case something does come up in the next 12 to 24 months. I hope they stick to that. I hope they don't feel like they have to spend this money. Nobody is going to be upset if they put a little more in savings, right? Will you be upset if they tuck away some of this money so that maybe, just maybe, we can get that additional state income tax decrease? I wonder how much extra they'd have to have in order to make that possible right away, to take it down to zero. That'd be a good question. Maybe we can get Representative Bannister or someone to look into that for us. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Firmin Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.